Welcome back. We are here today with another Stygian interview, and Pei is joining me again. And we are today with Daniel and Michelle of the channel OG Rose, and it's so wonderful to have you here. As always, let's just start with you giving us a little bit of info about you, about your YouTube channel and the creative things that you do.
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for having us. We're so honored to be here with you guys and to be in the collection, of course. It's a great honor. And yeah, we are OG Rose, Daniel, Michelle Garner. We are married. We have children. We live on a farm. And we collaboratively write together. And we have a couple of books out and available on Amazon. And we tend to have a philosophical orientation toward our nonfiction. Thank you, Pei. Very kind. Thank you.
Right there with the product placement.
That's right. Product placement. Thank you, Pei. So we're very blessed to have some incredible readers of our work, and we also have a YouTube channel where we have like summaries of our writing and different videos like that. And then we also have the net that happens weekly on Thursdays, where we have like other people who are philosophers or creatives who want to come and have conversation. We have very organic conversations on Thursdays, and those are up on our YouTube channel as well. There are also series as well that go toward like our books and our collections. And yeah, other than that, we have our family, we raise our family, we homeschool our kids. So a lot of fun, different adventures and different things we do. And I tend to write on more of the like poetry sides, shorter pieces. And I grew up as like a dancer. So performance art is really interesting and like something that I do and just do on the side here and there as well still. But yeah, we love working together and writing together. We've been doing that since 2011. Yeah.
Yeah, so OG Rose, Opperman, Garner Rose, and it's lovely to have an opportunity to be part of the Stygian. We do a lot of fiction, but there's not as many opportunities to put out fiction. Also, once you put it online, you can't submit it to journals or publications and different things. So we've been doing that for a very, very long time. But it's also been nice, too, to have this kind of online philosophy space, because you have all these, because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll actually have a philosophy essay that then is kind of in the background of the story. So you actually write the essays to then kind of have the thematic framework that you're occupying in, but then you don't do anything with the essay because there's really not, in my opinion, a lot of philosophy journals unless you're part of an academic scene, which we are not in. Glad of it. So it's very nice to have the YouTube channel to do the philosophy and to do the nonfiction and the stuff that we do there, but not as many opportunities to do fiction. So the booktube scene is really encouraging, and then to have this independent publication. We really appreciate what Stygian has done to offer an anthology opportunity for the booktube space, and to be part of that has been a real delight. So thank you for doing that. And it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for all the work you did to make it possible, because that's a ton of work. So well done to you and Pamela and everyone. So thank y'all.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're both so happy to have you involved in the project. Your piece, we chose it to, for anyone watching who hasn't read yet, we chose it to wrap up the anthology. And I think it was, we wanted to give it an important place. And I think that it's really perfect for that, because it's just, I love it. And Pei loves it as well, as we both flip through our books here. I guess what I should ask straight away, because usually I forget to ask this right away, is just tell us a little bit about the story without, spoiling much of it, of course.
Yeah.
It's always hard to do. It's always hard to do.
Yeah, but no, well, thank you for asking, and thank you again for including our piece Olive Leaves into the collection and having it as the sort of capstone on the end there. And I think that the story is really trying to, I think I can talk about it from a thematic perspective. It's really looking at what does it mean to confess. It's talking about like, what does it mean to have truth and to share that truth. And, sometimes we tell ourselves stories, right? And is that sort of, is that a lie? Or is that, is that a way to sort of like live out a certain truth that might not be before your eyes, but it's a truth you believe in with your heart? And so I think that the story is really trying to play on a lot of those themes. And yeah, I'll let Daniel tell a little bit more about it.
Sure. No, that's excellent. And again, it's wonderful to be here. The story will start off asking between a mother and a daughter, and the question of the mother has an illness and she doesn't want the daughter to know. I don't think that's giving much away because it's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Is that unloving? Is that cruel? Very often we'll have difficulty in life, and you'll be found in this tension when somebody asks you, how are you doing? What did you do today? There's always this interesting tension between, is it appropriate to go into detail on it and to go into those different things? Or is it actually kind of an act of love to hold back and to not go into those different details? An example involving a sickness is kind of an extreme example, but I think it's something that we actually deal with all the time. On what degree do we expose what's going on in our lives, when it's appropriate, when it is not. The title Olive Leaves is going to be playing on a few different meanings. One of them the most obvious is peace. Olive leaves are a way for peace. So are we keeping the peace to hold things back, or is that peace a lie? Are you creating a better environment by holding things back? It makes me think as well, in Dante, there's this fascinating image where Dante's kind of mad at Beatrice. Why won't you smile at me? And Beatrice is like, well, if I did, it would kill you because I'm so glorious and you're so low in Paradiso. You're not ready for me to smile till you get to the top. So there's this intentional holding back so that you're not destroyed. And I think we actually do something similar all the time in our lives, where we hold back so we don't overwhelm. Is that good? Is that bad? Why? Why not? And the story tries to explore that.
I think that it's very relatable on that level, because there are so many just small ways we do that in everyday life. Like you were saying, you know, like you go to the hairdresser and they say, oh, you know, how's it going? What are you up to? And if something's going on in your life, it's like, do I want to be honest, or do I just want to say I'm okay?
A few questions, but yeah, just what was the inspiration behind the story in general?
No, that's excellent. And in fact, a lot of just in your own personal life, dealing with those tensions on like finding and going, oh, to what degree do you expose? There's also a question of like, is it kind of an act that violates friendship if you tell just everyone everything you're going through? There's something about like a friend is precisely someone who you tell things you don't tell other people, right? Well, that's kind of funny because it sort of suggests that friendship is something that is kind of defined in terms of something that might be immoral because you're hiding back from other people to designate that friendship as a friendship. So that quandary, I think also from just personal experiences, from just dealing with that issue and thinking it through. I think also some inspirations came. There was a lot of themes that are referencing the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, Noah, the olive leaves, the birds, the sort of nestling and different things like that. I would think the story also was kind of set up structurally more like a Flannery O'Connor story in the way that you have a twist, something kind of building up where you're also trying to explore like in Flannery O'Connor, for example, she's exploring, does grace sometimes have to be violent? Like if God is trying to reach you and you're a sinner and therefore you're not open to God, does that mean God has to stab you with a bull or something, right? Is that how grace reaches you? And I think that's sort of playing with the notion of love or honesty and trying to look at it through a more difficult lens or something that's a little more unclear. Was also an inspiration. So I'd say the story has a Flannery O'Connor sort of structure to it, a way of thinking. I would say from my own personal, the own personal experiences, we talk about it because, when you're a family or different people, and also just questions of the relation of a mother with a daughter, like we have children. And there's this question of what do you tell them? What do you not tell them? You have to make decisions like that all the time.
Yeah, really quick. Another wonderful author in the Stygian Collection, Samantha, we've had a conversation with her about this because of a story that's not in the collection, but in her work that she's working on in her book called Blue Raspberry. But it goes through her story goes through a lot of similar questions, really about like with children, like what do you sugarcoat things or should you just tell them like bluntly, like what's the loving thing to do? So I think the story really does explore that and really tries to situate the reader in that tension too.
Yeah, and just to add, if anyone watching is interested, I think that story you mentioned that's Samantha wrote. I think she posted that on her channel.
She did. I think she did read it. Yeah, on her YouTube channel. Yeah. So yes, the Greener Side of Sam. You could check it out there.
Blue Raspberry.
Yeah.
I will link it somewhere in the video when I post it for sure. And I'd like to hear that as well. Yeah, of course. I think that's a great place to start with a story concept, especially for the themes that we play on with Stygian. Just it's been very fascinating to see everyone's take on the theme that we had of like darkness and hellishness, and that can take so many different forms, right down to that aspect of how you conduct yourself every day and with children. So what inspired you to contribute to the collection?
Well, Daniel mentioned it a little bit, but it's funny because a lot of people might know us as OG Rose for a lot of our philosophical work, and we're really glad for that. We love that and love getting to do that as well. But really, like, our first work that we started with in terms of our collaborative work was fiction. I mean, we did years of fiction, and it's very hard to find a place to also for us at the time, self-publishing wasn't as quite as much of an accessible thing to do, and it wasn't as common. And also, if you did self-publish, then it basically automatically meant your work couldn't necessarily go to other publications. But it's very difficult to find like the blend of fiction and philosophy. And I think because of you guys being able to curate it yourself and having that ability to hold space for both really made it a very appealing to us. And that's why I think we were inspired to contribute to the collection, because you guys are really doing a very novel thing, and it's really exciting and just like a kind of a breath of fresh air to have a place for work like ours. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, if a lot of these online communities are going to survive, then people need to contribute and do the work to make them happen. If something works, it seems like it works by magic, but you work really hard to make it seem like it didn't take any work. That's always the tension of the artist, right? Is you're working really hard to make it seem like it just happened. And so we really believe in that, and we really believe in these kind of movements you see on BookTube and online. And like Michelle said, we've submitted for years and years. We have a novel, Turn the World, Blackout, and the stars were signing the big one, Digression Savior. And you send them off and different things, and you wait a year, and you're not allowed to send it to anyone else. And then they get back to you, and you get a high, they're like, we really like the story, but it's not what we're looking for right now. Bully art, all these different, we did, we have on the YouTube page some of the stories that we've had published and the pushcart and, the Iowa and some of the poems. So that's all really good. But also another reason why, we've moved into the direction of like getting the conflict of mind out and, self-publishing with the philosophy is also because as of 2019, the journals really slowed down. Like they started taking like a year to get back to you, and and you're not allowed to submit to anyone else. Like if you send your poem, like my cup, it took, you can't send to anyone else. And
it's locked up for a year to a year and a half.
That's unfair.
And like, we would do Virginia Quarterly Review, Boulevard, and different, it'd be 8 months. And I get it, they're busy and different things, but then it made things difficult. So also too, Stygian is very interesting because there is this idea of going down the river, some sort of dark, some sort of crossing, and there is questions, can life, the image I also have with it is Dante. And I think it's very interesting with Dante that to get to parody, the only way he gets to the hill at the beginning, and you got the she-wolf, and he can't go back, and he has to go through the Inferno to get to the beatific vision at the end of the Paradiso, right? The only way one can go through this to go the entire journey requires going through the Stygian. And I think likewise, the only way to become fully human is to ask questions like, can lying be good? Can telling fiction be a way to get at truth? Like these are very complicated and difficult questions, but not asking them and not going through them, not crossing that river, is going to result in an impoverishment of our humanity, because these are part of the world that we are in. So thematically, that would also be a reason of interest.
Yeah, I love that answer. Just thinking on Stygian more, there were elements of that I would say we definitely thought about with going with that name, and that it's so broad. And one of our things, because I mostly write like young adult sort of fantasy, sometimes horror, mystery, that kind of thing, and Pei is in the more philosophical side of things. And we're like, how do you merge that? What kind of theme do you use to merge that? And we had done some shared readings where I would mostly do my poetry. And I think we found that even though my audience is, our audiences are very different, there are these elements of sort of exploring the world and exploring darkness that we both do in our writing. And I think that's what we wanted to have come out in Stygian as well. And I think the collection was a great representation of that idea, just because there are a lot of challenging pieces in there, and it really makes you think. And I mean, I say, like, books that make you think is one of the tags I've been using for the Stygian Collection, and I think it really delivers in that area. We have a great collection of authors.
Oh yeah, and I'll just add, I actually think that there's a real hunger for literature and writing that makes people think that a lot of the agencies don't appreciate.
Yeah.
I think that people actually want that. Well, literature is able to bring to the forefront tensions, tragedies, trade-offs between competing goods, ideas, thought, first-person perspective, ways of seeing the world that other forms of art cannot do so well. And so it really needs to kind of lean into that, because if it doesn't, then people, why read a book? Why not watch a movie? You hear that all the time, right? Yeah. It's very important for every art form to own the medium that they are and not indirectly wish that they were another medium or art form. And one of the things that literature can do that's unique is, in fact, these kind of deeper explorations of ideas. I'm not saying that other forms can't do that either, but there is something about literature that has always been uniquely positioned to deal with those things.
So I agree. And we were also very frustrated by what publishers are doing. Things have been sort of made, like, I don't know if the word homogenous would be good for this, but there's a lot of just similarities, and every publisher wants the same thing right now. So it's very hard to submit anything outside of a particular box. And that's why we say art for art's sake. Like, we want talented people who are making you think, and that's the goal. There isn't anything outside of that. Like, we're not focused on like personal identities and social media followings and things, which I think have become really way too highlighted right now in the publishing industry.
Yeah.
Well, and I should just add, and I'll give it to you, like, one of the things I would always say is like, oh, well, you need to build a platform before we come to you. And you're like, how do you build a platform before you've been published in these things to do it? And you're just looking at me like, really? But actually, I think it's very similar to Hollywood. Why are they making all these sequels and remakes? Because there's so much money, and they want to make sure it's almost like what you fear is what comes unto you. That's a theme in a lot of our stories. And they're all afraid about going bankrupt, and then they make the material that nobody likes, and then they go bankrupt. So it's kind of an irony, which I do think speaks to the kind of decentralized creative efforts that we see online, where people are like, okay, fine, we'll do our own thing. And I think you can see a renaissance or kind of a new light that comes out of that.
Yeah, no, and I think it's wonderful. Like, I think it's incredibly, like I said, it's just so, to me, it's because, I mean, it's been years of us kind of being in that, having our feet in that world of just the very conventional kind of publishing route, and literary magazines and stuff like this. And it's very exciting to see that it's something you recognize as something that we desperately need, and writers desperately need it too, and the world needs it, because I think the world does need art for art's sake. And so when you make that initiative to say, well, let's do something about it, let's put something together, like that's huge. And I think it's really wonderful. And I do think there's something that is kind of like a renaissance of that is coming up and emerging, or just organically amongst people who are like, wait a second, we can do this, and we can, like, we don't just have to keep relinquishing the power of that to other people's hands. We can take that into our own hands and make something ourselves. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's really, again, needed and really appreciated. And so it's very exciting, and it's just, that's why we're very pleased and very honored to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And creativity needs that level of freedom, I think, to explore and not be boxed in. Like, Pei and I talk about this a lot about the rules that are put on us currently with social media and publishing companies.
Oh yeah, and there's a few magazines, like Rediver, I think, out of Emory. They did different works where they understood the need to bring philosophy and to escape the trappings of literary fiction that they would talk about. And the Azura magazine, they were good. And then Sandra, we enjoyed working with the Right launch with so there are some good ones, and but the issue is that the industry unfortunately has contributed. It actually can be quite disheartening to people. And it's never good. I mean, art and creation is hard enough as it is, let alone having this kind of disheartening element. Another reason why works like the Stygian are so important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just well, so and as you, with your YouTube channel, you put out quite frequently there, as well as publish quite a bit, and I guess I was just gonna ask how you manage or balance with everything you do, as Michelle, you're saying, even with everything outside the creative work, there's still, well, life and the job that you guys work and that is beside all of this. It's a lot. And I think Holly and I discuss quite frequently questioning how it is you manage to do as much as you guys do.
We both do a lot, but then we look at what you're putting out there and we're like,
Oh, you guys are very kind. And, you know, honestly, well, I will say probably one of the biggest things for us is that Daniel has been, you know, when you've been working on things for years and years and years, you do have a very wonderful backlog of a lot of things that you have got multiple things kind of going at the same time. And we really believe in a compounding effect. We believe that like just doing a little bit at a time it does compound and it does build. Suddenly you're like, whoa, I've got a lot now. I've got a lot to work with. I've got a lot of material. So I think that that's something that's just kind of in the background for us of like our kind of philosophy about writing and work in general is like the compounding effect. And yeah, I mean, I think that it's certainly there's a juggle of things that have to be kept up, like the balls that have to be kept in the air. And we don't like we do the best we can with that. But I think just acknowledging and recognizing that, again, if you put the effort in every day, it goes a long way. And then also just try to have some grace for yourself too, when you are not able to get to the thing or not able to do the thing yet, like there's a project I'm working on right now and I still haven't gotten to do it yet. And it's like, well, okay, I can either just beat myself up about it, or I can just recognize that I'm doing other important things right now too, and I will get to it, but I don't nevertheless like still work on refining it, or, just even taking little moments to whatever, to tweak it or write some things down or whatever it is. It's just, I think it's really the compounding effect for us, and also the having the years of like the work that's been building for years, like
Sure.
maybe even over a decade.
Well,
So, yeah.
definitely. So there's a few things. Definitely the compounding effect cannot be overstated. Second, if you write every single day, say for an hour, then your body gets used to writing every single day for an hour, and it's automatically in the mode, for example. And if you do it at the same time every single day, that's another big thing, because then at 8 o'clock, your brain goes, 7 o'clock or whatever, it's ready to go. The other thing that I think is a lot of times people talk about time management, they really should talk about energy management. And what I mean by that is if you pay attention. So for example, you will often, like, let me speak for myself. Usually it's in the morning that you're very creative, very right brain. But as you go through the day, it goes to the left brain. Your brain tends to move from right to left. So you should go from creative writing to editing throughout the day. Also, it's very important to read. I don't think writers read enough. Not general, I'm not speaking to a specific writer, but you're not going to write unless you have things in your subconscious that can come out. Also, the other thing, like, so for example, you also in your work to make money, I think for creatives, it's quite useful to consider blue collar work, because when you're doing blue collar work, you'd actually be amazed at how well blue collar work can work. If you're willing to get your hands dirty on load trucks or, do different things, they pay well. And as you're doing the chairs, you actually can be thinking about your ideas. Also think, different things. So also too, so if you're writing in the morning, then you're moving to your manual labor. And then as you get to the evening, you're editing. That also too, if you edit on paper and you write on a screen, then your brain associates looking at a screen with creating, and it associates looking at paper with editing. So you have these mental spaces. So paying attention, being very, very intentional, how you condition your body to have automatic responses to certain stimuli, like computer versus paper, is also extremely useful. Other things too, there are also other tricks. For example, I'm not going to speak generally. Sometimes you'll find that your creativity is stronger before you eat. So you really should wait to eat. Once you go into editing, you want to be more left brain, and eating can kind of send you into the left brain, right? So you have the morning for that. The other thing, another trick, is if you have there are little things too, like, so for example, if there's a particular shirt you put on whenever you write, then when you put on that shirt, your body goes, oh, it's writing time. So having like outfits that you put on at particular times, which sounds OCD, I understand, but you're actually just conditioning your body to go, oh, it's good time. Oh, it's good time. The other thing is you should decide the night before what you're going to write the next day. Like, so for example, if you have a paper, you write down all the notes, you think, I think there's something here. Because if you wake up the next morning and you have a blank sheet of paper, your brain is too creative to structure it. It's not ready for structuring. It looks at the blank paper and goes everywhere. But if you have a structure, then your brain can latch onto that structure and then create from there. I would also say some other little things is you should go back on books you read, mark paragraphs. Like one of the, I think, best practices for creative writing that I got from Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography, he used to get newspapers and he would write verbatim the paragraphs to teach himself how to write. Well, like for Olive Leaves, before writing it, like going in verbatim some passages out of Absalom by Faulkner, some out of like Flannery O'Connor, you then get it into your system and then you throw all those notes away, like Isaiah Berlin before a presentation, and then you go into the work and now you also have the voice that you want to bring into it in addition to the structure. So I think there are various practices like that where you pay attention to where your creative energy is and leaning into that, how to keep that energy alive. Notice when you're sleepy midday, most people tend to get sleepy midday. Also laying down for 10 minutes can be a trick because you can do that, or you go do fence posts or blue collar. And then when you come out the other side. So not just managing time is important, but doing certain things at certain times in the day relative to the kind of mental processes or energy that you have. That also, I think, can be useful, but you have to pay attention to yourself to notice that, because I think it does vary between people. I'm not telling everyone what I just said is the golden rule, but paying attention to, am I more creative after I eat or before I eat? What did, Jonathan Edwards would write down the precise things that he ate every single day for 3 months to figure out, oh, I actually feel better after I eat cereal than before, then I'll eat that. And like really paying attention to that can make a huge difference.
That is also fascinating. Everything you were saying, like each of those things I have touched on at some point, like in my process. And I'm a morning creative person as well. I've got my like physical editing right here. So for me, I very much relate to all of those things. And I think that that's really, really powerful advice that's going to help a lot of people watching this. So thank you for going into such great detail with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, I've heard a lot of some of this. I know it reminded me of something I read about Hunter S. Thompson. He would type out whole entire Fitzgerald novels word for word to try and get that style. Which it's weird. It's funny because I think it was Fitzgerald he did that with, but you read Hunter S. Thompson, Fitzgerald, and I would not have guessed their styles to be remotely one inspired from the other. But anyway, in any case, I did read that somewhere. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
I've heard that before. And my personal thing, I would read. I have to get back to it. I would read Virginia Woolf before working on my story because then her voice was in my head, and that's sort of what I was wanting to emulate.
I think another thing, I think that's excellent. I think people worry that if they copy verbatim, they'll lose your voice. You cannot lose your voice. No. Whatever you verbatim copy is just going to create a synthesis or enhance or come out. And people are like, what? You like Faulkner? I didn't know that, but because there's always going to be uniqueness. The other thing too, that when you read, you ought to have multiple books that you're reading so they can cross-pollinate, but that you intuit a relation. If the books you read are too different in tone and all over the place, it can kind of pull you apart. But if you intuit, obviously Faulkner, O. Henry, Flannery O'Connor, Walker Percy, I'll read those together. Well, then they're different, but they're also not random. And that's another thing to kind of, and you really should create stacks of books you're going to read relative to the project that you're doing. Like you say, oh, this book is kind of like in the Garden of Good and Evil, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil or something like that. Okay, these are kind of writers of this. I'll read them then. And then when I'm doing this story over here that has something to do with 2040 something, then I'll read Neuromancer and all these other works, right? You should not be reading Gibson when you're working on your Southern Goth novel, right? Because that's going to be throwing you off. And unless you intuit something that I don't know, maybe
unless you want it to be real unique in an interesting way.
and you should be, but you should also be aware like we were talking with Mr. Sweeney, and Ivan Illich always kind of emphasizes limits and different things. You really should be aware of what you are watching. You should make it, you should time what movies you watch, when, and shows and music, because all of these things are going to come out in the creative process. And like, do you want these things in conversation together in your head when you're working on this precise work?
Yeah, really quick. Yeah, we're actually going to be teaching a course at Parallax with Andrew Sweeney, and it's a great group of people over there at Parallax, and we're really excited about it. And it's funny actually that the title of the class is "Look at the Birds of the Air," and there's bird themes a lot in Olive Leaves. But really quick, I just wanted to say what Daniel's saying about paying attention, which also I know pays channels attention, which is great. But it's like, it is this kind of interesting attention to your energy that I think is almost more important than just thinking about it in terms of time management. Because I don't know if we're just so saturated with the language about time management, but I feel like it often only exacerbates the problem sometimes for people, or makes them feel like more unable or something like that. Like it just gets kind of this like rut about time. But if we think about energy, I think we'll get a lot more closer to the flow that we hope to find as creatives, or are looking to be on when we're in our kind of creative process. That flow and energy is all about flow. And so yeah, it might not be the same for Daniel as other people, but it's that attention to when are you able to kind of harness that energy best, and then also relinquish yourself when you don't have that energy, and accept that, and use your like more lower energy state for the other things you might need to do. So
and don't feel guilty about it.
Don't feel bad about it, or
and
I should be like that. It's so easy to get like, oh, I should be like them, or I should be doing it this way, or I should be using this agenda. No, you just need to pay attention to yourself and what's actually working and what's not working, and then be willing to make some changes, and then just also get kind of creative with that itself. Like get creative with, okay, this seems to be working, but this isn't working as well, so maybe I'll try this.
And the other thing that kills people, do not worry about being original. Like this whole like, has it been said, has it already been said?
Well,
if you like
eat yourself alive with that.
You will eat yourself alive. Like the thing we say, don't ask the question, has it been said? Ask, has it been heard? Like if you're writing a paper, if you think it needs to be written, then it hasn't been heard by definition. And also the unique way that you say it could unlock it for people that otherwise would not. Like in philosophy, for example, the same goes with stories. You say, oh, it's not original, you're done. Also, you should not be editing while you're writing. Like write, edit later. If your editor mind is on while you're writing, you're going to have a miserable process. Like go with the flow, go with the energy. And also be ready for a lot of stuff you write, like Michelle was talking years of combat, a lot of stuff you write, you're not going to use, or you're going to come back or tear it apart or different things. And you're like, oh, I wasted so much time. No, you did not waste time, because all of that was the development of the practice that you carry around in you right now that makes you capable of capturing the story that shows up tomorrow, that had you not done that work, you would not be able to capture it. Right. So it is all part of the story. Right. If you want to write stories, you must live a story. And all of that is part of the story. And so just go with the flow.
Extremely well said. Because I think we all have rhythms, right? And there's these sort of two black and white camps of either you are like forcing yourself to sit down and write, or you are just a slave to the muse. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. You figure out how to work within both of those and go, okay, well, how do I find the muse, and make that work for yourself so that you're not quite so tortured. I mean, I know the tortured artist is a thing, but you don't have to be.
Yeah. Well, really quick, I'm just thinking about like, the fact that some people were like, oh, well, I've got this job, and so I can't be as flex with like thinking about my energy level, or like, for like a lot of my quotidian tasks are, waking up and taking care of the kids and cooking the meals. And I love doing those things. I love to do those things. But, I have to kind of get creative with my creativity because of that. Some of those limitations, but it's cool because I think Nietzsche's great about this, with talking about sort of like the idea of like, we can transcend within our own limitations, which is really a neat opportunity. But I think that like, even with that said, you can still kind of, just for your own sake, pay attention to yourself within that, within whatever you are in right now. And then also like think about what you might need to do, or what you might need to add to be able to give yourself some, some windows, or like say you work just a job that's like your day job, right? If that day job is taking up your, like say you are very creative in the morning, like Daniel was saying, like, if that's where your energy is, maybe look for a job you can go like do in the afternoon, like do an evening type of job. So don't get, just try to think about like, okay, yes, you might not be able to find a job that could shift those hours for you, but start to like at least be open to that change so that you can make some space for your creative energy. And then also, if you can't though, don't lose hope. Just try to use the windows you do get for your creativity, and you might be surprised how much of like, you know, you actually do under that pressure in a weird way. Like I think about it, and I actually am probably I get more flow states and more I write more now than I did before I even had children. So it's interesting to me. It's not like, oh, I just had, you know, it's just, you can paint this picture of like having all the time in the world and then doing all of the work in the world, but it's not quite like that. That's not true to life. And sometimes actually when you have some limitations, and it's like having deadlines, right? It kind of makes you kind of get things done, or it makes you kind of realize, oh, my time is limited to work on this poem, so I'm going to really work at it and try and get it out. So I just want to share some other things like that.
Well, I mean, so there's a few things. One, I mean, there's for years we did those 5 a.m. things. Like if you have work, like getting in the morning when no one's awake to bother you, or different things, you know, that could be good. Also, you should not have your cell phone in your pocket while you're working. If you have if your brain is listening to that buzz, there are all these little things you have to do. But like Michelle was saying, like if you say your energy is in the morning, then go, okay, whereas there are jobs that start third shift or second shift or different things. Like look at these possibilities. It can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Also, too, there is no virtue in writing a lot. Like just writing a lot does not in of itself mean anything at all. We do not care. You know, Wallace Stevens, for example, you would say, oh, there's maybe notes to a supreme fiction, The Snowman. You know, if you take Ashbery, Convicts Married, you know, you don't think of all the thousands or hundreds of poems. You think about these few, right? And Flannery O'Connor, most people would say a good man is hard to find or something, right? Like the name of the game is something quality. It does not have to be a lot. And if you think of it that way, then the question becomes the following: not how do you write a lot every day, but how do you write something? And then how do you write something every day? Maybe it's a sentence, maybe it's two, it doesn't matter. And the other, like we talk about, we always emphasize compounding, because if you literally wrote one paragraph every day, and in 7 days, you have 7 paragraphs. And then in a month, it really does compound. And if you can think that and then say, I'm going to revisit this, I'm going to work through it, then all of these things become possible. But if you're asking, oh, how do I get in a routine so that I write a lot? Well, then you get discouraged and you see no possibility, right? But the other thing too with that, the reason why a habit of writing something is frankly like the most important thing, honestly, is because you have to make the habit become something where you feel like something is off if you don't do it. You see, you were talking about how there's these kind of routines of, oh, you have to do it, get 3,000 words or make it the flow. And both of them have some wisdom to it, but there also can be some ditches to it. If someone does exercise, there comes a point where they just look forward to running, right? They just like, because they do it every single day and they're like, oh, I need to run. Or if they eat healthy, there's a day where they look forward to eating healthy. They look forward to the constraint, right? The creative process must get to the place where you look forward to the thing you have to do. You just don't feel right unless you do it. And the question is the following: what is the amount of time you can do regularly so that it begins to feel like something, if you don't do, there's something off? Maybe that's 5 minutes, maybe that's 10 minutes, maybe that's 2 hours. The key is whatever time it is, plan yourself to be able to do that to the point where you will feel like something is off if you don't do it, and you'll get that sweet spot between the inspiration and the constraint, and then you'll be amazed by the compounding effect. And that will also use the energy in your favor, because your body will get used to those 5 minutes or get used to those 10 minutes. And again, the constraints can actually prove inspiring as well, because one of the problems that can happen with artists, if they're not forced to say, go to work or deal with fixing pipes or deal with kids, then they just write about writing, right? That can be a pitfall that some writers fall into. They just write about being a writer, and actually the constraint can make you bring to bear the writing impulse on things that otherwise never experience that writing view. So the constraints can actually be a gift in that way.
100%. And I was gonna say about this, you guys always make me think about so many things as you're talking. I'm like, okay, what am I going to zero in on? I was going to say that creativity is more of a treat when you do have constraints, and that's a good thing to have. So if that is if writing is all you're doing, you do risk losing a bit of love for it. So I think it is good to have that. And one of my stronger creative periods was when I was working at the University of Manitoba bookstore, and I would have these little notepads, and I would walk around doing stock, just like counting inventory, and we would write inventory down. But on the other half of the sheet, I was writing my story notes. and just fitting it in that way. Like there are these ways where you get creative and it makes your entire creativity kind of better just by trying to fit it in and making it this sort of like this treat and this fun thing you're doing in the midst of your other work.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think you had one last question.
Yeah, and
Before I-
yeah, this was the one I was wondering if I should have just put it in somehow with the other one. And you touched on this a little bit throughout, especially during when talking about publication. But yeah, I just gonna ask, how does the act of writing for a publication like what was done for Stygian differ from your other creative works or non-creative works?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I guess I don't think too hard about which publication is it for or which it is not. I think with Stygian, just in aligning with Olive Leaves on this question of how, like, these kind of questions of, can lying be loving? Is telling a story an act of love, or is it an act of deception? That would align with Stygian. I definitely think in the revising, so the story was written, that's why I kicked the table. The story was written, I guess, in 2010, and had revisited it and gone through, and we try to keep all the versions of it. And there's about 56 different versions of it, but it never quite worked. It never quite came together. But then with Stygian, because it was originally actually called Ali, named after the daughter, but it was lacking thematic structure that would bring it together. And I would say with Stygian, when you looked at it, you say, oh, we'd like to be part of this movement. We believe in this community. We believe in this work, and we believe in this anthology. How can we take this story and actually have it align with Stygian without ruining the integrity of the story? And that is where you started thinking about, well, how do we bring out the olive leaf theme, actually, which is going to play on this question of Noah's flood. And one of the lines of it is, silence, I want to imagine the olive leaves trembling, right? Which in one way is saying, I like to imagine that there's still hope, but is that actually self-deception, right? Where she's in this kind of confession booth. So then there was a bringing out of the details of also the confession booth. The opening scene in the confession booth also, it better aligns now with the dining room, which is also supposed to be a kind of confession booth, but it's telling the story. And so you have the shutting of the curtain. So there was ways of going through the story to bring the details more in line with Stygian, as well as some of the thematic elements. It was also going through and making sure some of the references to the book of Daniel with the writing on the wall, the sort of red lettering also aligned with it as well. So I would say definitely the story was put together and reimagined to align with Stygian. And that's one of the ways you kind of think about it. It's like, how can you do that, maintaining the integrity? And a lot of that will be changing or bringing out thematic elements to make possible that alignment.
That is so cool to hear, that there was a like a almost unintentional collaboration just by us putting that theme out there that affected your work. That's the first one we've got like this of the stories. Like there have been some elements where people say, oh, well, I had something that was like this that would fit, but not quite that sort of melding of the two concepts. That's interesting.
Oh, absolutely. No, I enjoy, I think I think, again, one of the things that literature can do that other art forms cannot do is precisely thinking in terms of these thematic structures that you can bring out in the text. It's kind of like, how do you have a story happening that as you have the events of the story, it's also pointing beyond itself at something else that's occurring, maybe like a vertical sort of dimension that is happening. And that's something that we try to do a lot in our work. And this was an invitation to really make Ali become something that did that better as olive leaves. So it certainly worked in a collaborative sense.
Wonderful. I don't want to take up your whole evening. I'm not sure what time it is there. And I know you have children. So I do have one last question before we get into our little wrap up, and also give Pei space to say something else if he wants after this. So going back sort of to the YouTube realm, since this is speaking of themes, a theme, we're all on YouTube, all the authors here. How do you believe your experience as a creator putting videos out on YouTube has influenced your writing style or your approach to storytelling?
In some ways, I feel like what we do on YouTube is like very much what we kind of had been doing. It's just sort of public. But I think that it's very encouraging to know that there are people who are interested and that there are people who want to like read and invest in our work. It means a lot. And I think perhaps the YouTube space for us also gives us an idea of like what is really kind of what people really value right now, or what people really are interested, not simply just from a preference, but what are the like key core kind of issues of our historic moment. I think it helps kind of give us a sense of what those things are, and so that might influence like some of the things we might touch on more in terms of like our writing, or what things we want to address, or how we would like to participate in the conversation. Not so much just like what are like hot topics, but more just so what's, because I think we're very, it's a real cool opportunity that we have and are participating in, which is like this liminal web space where you're hearing about like what are the like conversations that people are having about like some of the most fundamental things of our time. So it's quite neat to be able to participate in that conversation. And so our work may speak to some of those things, or be in conversation with other thinkers or other writers. And so in that way, it's neat to sort of have, it might be like more collaborative in that sense of like things coming out that may come out from conversations or OG Rose conversations that we have that then may appear in the writing as well. But like I said, it in some ways it just feels like what we have been doing for many years, just kind of out to the public. So yeah, that's what I would say.
No, it's very fair. I would say one of the things that Michelle was talking about a backlog. One of the things that YouTube can be good for is, one, if every week you force yourself to do one audio summary, one reading from the book, one OG Rose in the net, then you've got to do it even if you don't want to. And so you can kind of like, it becomes a sort of, okay, a lot of time that it becomes the exercise where you're like, okay, it's time to do an audio summary. Okay, it's time to do a paper. Okay, it's time to do those things. So it can be very nice to, if you set a schedule for yourself, because one of the things I will say is, like, for years and years, we've done all this work and just sat on your computer. And then you're working on these things or bringing them back up. It's like, okay, we've got to either come up with something new or we need to revise something that has existed. Like Belonging Again was written in 2016, for example. And by having this sort of like, oh, it's like Belonging Again 2 is that's been done for, and so it kind of forces you to get these things out, has been good. The other thing that we use YouTube for is basically like to really try to create these networks alternative to the superstructure, the publishing world. And like we try to review, like if people publish a book, we try to read it and talk about it. We try to have OG Rose conversations to use it to keep these things alive, because I think that's really important. Like if everyone, if you feel as if the system, quote unquote, is not letting you publish your book, or you're not getting to encounter new ideas because the only philosophy, videos out there are School of Life, which Faye and I will talk about all the time as a sin against humanity. If you do not like that, yes, they're quite terrible. If you do not like that, then you've got two options. Be quiet and accept it, or two, create an alternative. And I think today, because of the Zoom technology and the average person having faster internet, which actually is quite a new development, honestly. Yes, the internet has existed for a while, but for the average person to have, for a lot of people, to have internet fast enough to support Zoom technology, to upload videos. I mean, some of I don't even do the highest definitions because it would take us 6 hours, but I can do videos of definition enough that's 2 gigs that I can upload in 4 hours or whatever. Like these are things that are now possible that, I don't know, 2015, 2016, I mean, not long, but we have possibilities now of doing things that really, in a sense, have never been doable. Yes, there's been guilds. Yes, there's been networks, Bloomsburg groups, Scottish and different things. But to create these kind of communities that are reviewing and reading one another's work and entering in conversation and offering feedback, like that's new. And we use YouTube to be part of that because that matters. And again, if we feel as if the system is not right or there's something wrong with it, it's not going to change itself because it has a vested interest in not doing it. It will require us to do something. And so we're trying to do something, just as you have tried to do and successfully done with the Stygian publication. So thank you for it.
You're welcome. And thank you for being a part of it. And we just hope that we can keep it going, keep this energy going at this point. And Yeah, like that is the positive side of YouTube. I know a lot of things online can be frustrating, especially as a creative person, but there are a huge amount of opportunities out there as well. And we wouldn't have the collection if it weren't for that network, that the group of people we wound up putting together from YouTube.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, you know, one of the things that overwhelms people with the internet is all the possibilities. What videos do I listen to? What channels? Well, just focus on your friends. Like, that will save you a lot. Suddenly, if you can do, like, if you can limit yourself, just like we were talking about with Ivan Illich, well, suddenly the internet is great. When you don't have a way to limit yourself, you can go nuts, right?
Yeah.
But when you have these communities, now it's like, oh, I'll use YouTube to focus not on finding the next philosophy channel or what, you know, that this mainframe. I'm going to focus on my friends, our people, and we're going to build that. Suddenly the internet is a great thing because you have a limiting principle. Now, I'm not saying you can't randomly watch a video here and there on this, that, and so forth, but it also, the more these communities grow, I think we're going to see the internet become something that doesn't overwhelm people as much, because having people kind of engaging in these communities helps you decide what to focus on. And then you're glad the technology exists. So that's just another reason why doing this kind of work is important, because it helps people decide what they should focus on that matters, that truly does matter.
Yeah, and hopefully some of the people that we put forward with Stygian who don't necessarily have, you know, the social media or YouTube numbers, they can get that sort of highlight of like this, here's an amazing creative person. They might not have 1 million followers on a channel or something like that, but it's in those sort of places that you dive into deeper where you find some of the best stuff online and the most creativity and most inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, if you had to choose between 10,000 people you didn't know and 400 people that really read your stuff and care about you and that you know and you think are creating value, that's an easy choice.
Exactly.
But we have to create the networks and communities that offer those 400 people, and that's the work being done.
Yeah. So, Pei, is there anything else you would like to ask or add before we get to
I
wrap
think
up?
those final comments made are great. I like there's nothing really to add to that, really. I think that's a great point to leave off on.
Well, and we are going to be on, I think this will come out after, but I'm going to say it anyway. We are going to be on your channel, on the OG Rose channel on Sunday of this week. And I think that we'll be in more of a, like less of an interview format and more of a conversation. So that'll be really fascinating to delve into, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we are looking forward to it as well.
It's going to be an interrogation lamp.
Yeah, we have interrogation lamps.
We're prepared.
You're not allowed to eat or drink water for 48 hours. That's the only requirement.
Pei doesn't do that anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. It's fine. This is easy street. Easy street. No, we're looking. That will be a blast. Absolutely.
Oh no, I was just gonna mention, by the end of this month and beginning of October, I'm hoping to come out. I have a lot of stuff I've been working on that involves these communities, talking about what Philosophy Portal and of course OG Rose is doing, and as well as conversations with our friend Davude, if it seems like I've been a little gone for a bit, I have been, but I have a lot of work coming out at the end of this month. I've been compiling a lot, as that seems to be a theme that's
the
been
compounding
going on.
factor.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
there you go.
so it's
Divine.
I didn't stop working, I just haven't been keeping it.
Divine.
Looking forward to it, Pei.
We're all getting up and running again over here. With me too, going into NaNoWriMo season, because that's my big YouTube thing.
Awesome.
So I'm wrapping up the archetype series right now. That'll take me to the end of September, and then it's full into NaNoWriMo, which will be really great.
Outstanding.
That's wonderful. That's amazing.
So lastly, I want to give you a platform to just say what creative works you have going right now. I mean, I know it's a lot. Tell the Stygian viewers what you're working on, what they can see in the future coming up on your channel when they, hopefully go and subscribe to you.
Well, thank you so much, Holly, and thank you, Pei, for your guys' time and your great questions and this wonderful opportunity to talk with you guys. And yeah, I mean, we had a book called Belonging Again, which we released May 12th of this year, and that is, you can find on our Amazon page. So that is like our most recent release. We also have a collection of reflections called Thoughts that is also up on our Amazon page. We also have The Conflict of Mind, as well as a small short little piece that we had collaboratively worked with Javier Rivera and Thomas Jockin called Philosophy of Glimpses. So those are all on our Amazon page. You can find them there. And we have some books in the works as well. So
Sure.
yeah.
You know, we're aiming to get Second Thoughts out. I suppose I'll announce the release date. It's either going to be like December 15th, because this is the thing, if you publicly do it, then that's like a fire thing.
Yeah.
So we've edited to like 110. So Second Thoughts, which is 50 assorted, we can call it, if it's 100 pieces, it's assorted reflections. If it's 50, it's assorted considerations. That tend to be kind of longer pieces or different things. So Second Thoughts. We've started to put up the second book in the Truism the Rational trilogy is called The Map is Indestructible. At one point that was book 3, but after working on it and reconstructing it as and bringing it back, it seems like it's better as volume 2. So the 4 parts are put up now. That book has to be edited and put together. There's also the Parallax course that will be in November. We're looking forward to. That's going to really focus on Ivan Illich. Sign up for that, should be coming out. We also have will be working with the wonderful Cadell on the next anthology at Philosophy Portal on the Science of Logic. He taught an extraordinary class on Hegel's The Science of Logic that we had the pleasure of being part of the conference. We had pleasure of presenting. I had a pleasure of being a guest lecturer in it as well, bringing together David Hume, Hegel, and what I like to call the modern counter-enlightenment. So that was a blast. We're doing work with friends of ours, Alex and Andrew, on storytelling. They have a wonderful presentation at the Meaning Code on what is a story. And the argument is that a lot of screenwriters and people don't even know what a story is, which sounds crazy. Doesn't everyone know what a story is? Well, the argument is they maybe not. And so we've been working with them on that. So those are some of the projects in the work. And then wedding season at the venue coming in October. So that ought to be grand.
The kids and I are also trying to make a dollhouse.
So they
My mom and I tried to make a dollhouse for years and we never finished, sadly. It's one of her greatest losses, I think. So I hope you can get yours finished.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, just a few projects on the go.
Yeah, just a couple projects.
Oh, we can't wait to see everything as it comes out, and hope that everyone watching this follows and reads your works. It has been really wonderful having you here. It's a great conversation. It's lovely chatting with you both. And yeah, I guess we will let you go and have the rest of your evening. But thank you again so much.
Yes, thank you.
This has been a blast.
It's been wonderful. Thank you both so much.
It.
Yeah, we've loved it. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye.